Seasoned game developer Nate Purkeypile spent 14 years at Bethesda working across multiple Fallout games, Skyrym, Metroid Prime 3, Starfield, and more. Purkeypile left Bethesda during Starfield's production to found Just Purkey Games, whose first title, solo RPG The Access Unseen, came out in October 2024. We caught up with Nate at GDC to discuss his time with Bethesda, his solo studio, and what the future holds for this veteran developer.
So Nate, I want to talk about first your tattoos.
Okay.
When did you get them?
I just got this done on Tuesday,
On
so
Tuesday.
it's still fresh.
And these are tattoos of every game you have worked on, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And can you show us all of them and name them as you do?
Sure. There's Blood Rain 2, Aeon Flux, Metroid Prime 3, Fallout 3, Skyrym, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Starfield, and then my indie game, The Access Unseen.
So that represents your career, basically.
Other than the game that was in the movie Grandma's Boy, technically that's the one game I worked on that was canceled. It still kind of exists.
If you had to pick a favorite, can I just ask which would that one be?
Maybe Fallout 4. That one was really fun to work on, and we had like our workflow pretty set, and that was also before the studio got like too big, so it was still a pretty tight-knit crew.
Right. You realize that this kind of locks you into, you have to now ship 9 more games. I mean, you kind of just have to. Are you cool with that? Is that you think you're up for that?
Yeah, I think so, for symmetry, right?
Right. The Access Unseen was your first solo game, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
You've been with Bethesda for how long?
I was there for 14 years.
14 years. During the development of Starfield, you decided you wanted to break off and do your own thing.
Yeah, it was time. Like I had been there so long, and Starfield wasn't super my thing. I mostly went there for Fallout, which worked out great since like 10 of those years were just on Fallout games.
At any point after you left and were developing your own game, did you have any like, I don't know, second thoughts? Do you have any doubts? Do you have any like panic? Like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
No. Like honestly, had been so much less stressful as an indie, even though it's like, yes, I'm not actually making any money until I ship something. Still, not having to have those daily meetings all the time and constantly trying to push things through all the office politics and approval layers. Like it was very refreshing to just care about the game.
And that kind of situation you're talking about where it was so many meetings, so many people to go through and so many layers, that wasn't how it was when you were working on games like Skyrym and Fallout, is that correct?
No, not at all. Like we were much, much smaller then, and we had quite a bit of freedom to do stuff. Like one that people know about that we did was Blackreach in the game. Some of people's like their favorite location, but that was not on schedule at all. Like we just kind of did that on the side and put it in, and that was a lot of things on that game. Like the werewolves was a whole side project from somebody. Like originally it was just dudes with dog heads, and someone took it upon themselves to make it like awesome. And that's where I think a lot of the great stuff within Skyrym came, was having that freedom to do what you want as opposed to it being this whole checklist design and design by committee.
Right. So, and during the Starfield time, that would have been like, say you had some idea that you're like, oh, maybe I'll throw that in. That just wouldn't be possible in terms of the, all the kind of rigmarole you had to go to.
Yeah, I think you would basically get in trouble for doing that, because everything does have a cost on other departments. So I understand why that happens at that scale, because if everyone is doing that when you have 500 people, it's a mess. But with 100 people, it's much more manageable, and where a lot of the interesting things come from. But yeah, there is a burden on like QA and often sound, and all these things come up.
And your studio, Just Purkey Games, it's just you. There's no one else. That's correct?
Yeah, I'm the only actual full-time developer. Like on the Access Unseen, I contracted out some writing and the music and some drawings, but I was the only one like making the systems and all the world art and animation, creatures, you name it.
You're not the only former Bethesda developer who has talked about like, oh, the situation when the studio got so big, it became really difficult. Would you think that Bethesda might scale down a bit? Do you think they'll maybe take some of that to heart and maybe change, or do you think it's just kind of so big now that might not happen?
Yeah, I would be surprised if it changed at this point, because there's so much momentum in a company of that size that to be like, hey, what if we went back to the old ways? Like, I don't think that happens. And usually when it does, it's maybe not great. Like arguably that's what happened with like BioShock. There was a whole team, and then that got shut down, and then it's been incubating essentially another BioShock for ages. So I feel like that's tough to get that to happen though, and a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that.
I know obviously you don't miss all the meetings and all the approvals and things. Do you miss some of the collaboration? You miss working with other artists and other developers and programmers and writers and things like that?
Yeah, and I worked with a lot of really good people who I wouldn't mind working with again. So people ask me if I would go back to AAA. It's like not necessarily, but I would work with a lot of those people I worked with because they're all really talented. But a lot of them have also like moved on as well.
Going solo, doing kind of everything yourself, what did you find maybe the most surprisingly difficult thing about it?
I think anything dealing with UI is actually probably the hardest because it's so much about not just the UI itself, but the UX and how people actually interact with it. There's all sorts of specific things with font kerning and font choice. Like it's very easy to get in the weeds on it. And I think UI is often on a game never done. It's just shipped at some point because it always goes through all these iterations, and that takes a lot of work.
What about in terms of, say your game is done, you did it, you made your own game, then you have to get the word out. You have to do marketing, you have to, do events and things like that. Like, had you had any experience in that type of thing before?
I had only been involved in like making some trailers, but I wasn't actively like on the press team or anything like that. I would have to go up for some conferences, but yeah, so I had to learn how to do all that stuff on my own and like posting on all the different social networks, and I got a no-clip documentary on the game. So I feel like I did a pretty good job getting the word out there as much as possible, and that's part of why I announced pretty early with the game. I was like, nobody's gonna care really who I am, so I should just start pushing on it early.
I'm guessing probably a certain amount of your player base became aware of it because of your history with Bethesda. There's the game by a former Bethesda developer. Let's go check it out because we love Bethesda.
Yeah.
Was there any, kind of reaction maybe from players who played it and were maybe, disappointed, like, oh, this isn't Skyrim, what's going on? Or this isn't Fallout. Was it hard to kind of deal with some of those expectations and all?
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of that. And I try and set the bar for what the game is as much as possible. Like at the intro screen, it's like a solo indie game by Nate Purkeypile. Because I want it to be clear, like, even though it is a big indie game with like, 6 regions and all these creatures, like, yeah, it's just me. I'm not gonna have like towns full of people and all these other systems. So it is still an indie game. But that's tough, especially because like presentation wise, it's all these fancy Unreal features. So some people might not even read anything at all and just look at the pictures. And so I understand why it happens.
So something we see at Bethesda, sequels, several Skyrim or Elder Scrolls games, several Fallout games, Access Unseen. Are you thinking of Access Unseen 2?
I wouldn't rule it out. I've also thought about like taking it and doing other things sort of with that world, but maybe in a adjacent genre or something. But I haven't committed to anything just yet.
Do you have any plans, for Just Purkey Games, maybe in the future, to scale up and maybe take on other, I'm not saying become a Bethesda-sized company of 500 people, but, add some other programmers and other developers and artists and things like that?
Right now, I plan on keeping it this size just because I find it really fun and freeing, but I wouldn't rule out anything for now. I would just like to also do it like when my kids are older, and that's part of why I was solo, so I could have a more erratic schedule and have it be fine, as opposed to whenever I had time off at Bethesda, but that's not really time off, and you come back and you have like 1,000 emails you have to respond to, and you're like, well, I just pushed work down the road. Like, it's not a real vacation.
Right. So you're working on, sounds like a very different type of game.
Yeah, I'm doing very much a palate cleanser. After like 3.5 years on a project, I was like, I have this really stupid idea that I've wanted to do for a while, so I'm gonna just pause on the Access Unseen for a little bit while I sort out porting and whatnot and make this game.
And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's called Deedly Doo Carcour, and everything in it is made out of Play-Doh that me and my kids made, and I scanned with my phone and then put it in the game, and then all the sound effects are just me making sounds into a microphone. So it's extremely goofy, and you just like do wall jumps with a car using explosions. That's the pitch.